Yeah, we are super excited because the last few months, as soon as draft talk really kind of started around here and the mock draft started, Mason Graham was a name that was immediately mocked to the Jags with that 5th pick, and that's kind of consistently been the name for the most part that has been linked to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we want to get to know him a little bit more, the player he is, expectations for the NFL level, and we'll get to maybe some of the other Michigan prospects too. But I know the height thing has been some of the chatter when it comes to Mason Graham, and we can get to that. But I want to start with his scheme versatility, his ability to move across multiple techniques, his time at Michigan. Where do you feel he was at his best, and where do you see that at the next level?
Well, he plays best out of shade. So you could put him in any system, and ideally not a nose in an odd front, but he could hold his own in there. But if you shade him on the center, or if you shade him on either side of the guard, he's a guy that uses leverage extremely well. He's quick off the ball. He's got a great first step. And it's the counter moves that make him so dangerous as well. When you have to move to block him, as a former wrestler, he does a great job of using leverage, using his body and yours to his advantage. And whether it's coming across your face, but it's the acceleration from, if you're just simply talking about getting after the passer, from being able to be in contact with the defensive lineman, shedding that block, and then getting downfield after the quarterback. That's one of the things that he does best. So I'm really excited about the potential of him and what he can be in the NFL. I think he comes in as a day one impact player, but if he's able to fine tune and really master his craft, I think in a couple of years, you could be talking about him as one of the dominant premier defensive tackles in the NFL.
Hey, John, Mia O'Brien here. Thanks so much for hopping on with us. And, of course, our listeners, who we affectionately refer to as Heeligans, can find John on X at John, Jon, Jansen 77. Let's go through the litany of silly season pundits and their question marks surrounding Mason Graham, who I agree with you. I believe he has the highest floor of arguably any first-round prospect in this year's draft class. This idea, number one, of his weight. What do you make of that discrepancy? Secondly, we've now heard about, was the production really there? When you hear national, regional analysts try to poke holes into Graham's game, what say you, especially on those two fronts?
Turn on the film. This is all silly. I'm glad you labeled it as silly season, because the one thing that annoys me is the amount of people that go to the combine and they put up astronomical numbers, but you turn on the film and you're trying to figure out, where is this great athlete? Turn on the film for Mason Graham, and I love this comment at the combine as well. Which game do you want to see? Well, turn on the Ohio State game, but you could turn on any of the games, and I would even encourage you to go back to 2 years ago when we played in Minnesota. And Minnesota has been widely recognized as having good offensive linemen, but they're huge offensive linemen. And he handled all of them, and his size, his height, all of that stuff did not matter. It's one of the best games I've seen him play. And it was really just upwards from there. And that was after coming off an injury. And I think he might have had a broken hand at the time. So I don't really buy into, as somebody that went through the combine, somebody that had all of these different things said, well, you're too slow, you're too short, you're too long, all of these different things. Turn the film on, and football players find a way to make plays. And Mason Graham is just a flat-out football player.
So, John, it sounds like you would draft him at number 5 overall if you're the Jaguars.
Oh, certainly. You put him next to Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines Allen, and you got yourself, I think, a very formidable front. And again, one that can continue to grow over time. And I know Eric Armstead, right? You brought him in trying to be an answer at defensive tackle. At the end of the year, he played a little bit better, but he's an older guy. And who wouldn't want a Wolverine over a Buckeye in terms of Davon Hamilton? So just a friendly jab there. But I think he adds a lot to that defensive front, what you can do with both edge guys and just unleashing them on the quarterback. You get push inside the pocket from Mason Graham. Even if he doesn't get home, it makes Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker even better.
John, we are here for the friendly jabs. We love those. And especially I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm very upset with Ohio State at the moment.
I'm sorry.
But when we talk about the conversation we had before the season started last year, and I was very wrong. I thought the defensive front, the defensive line for the Jags was going to be one of the better parts of the Jags because of the addition of Eric Armstead, because of what they were able to do rotational-wise, and Ryan Nielsen coming from Atlanta. That did not work. There was a lot of issues. And so when we talk about that combination of being able to create pressure in the middle, which is a huge part of successful defenses now in the NFL, but also being able to stop the run, which Jacksonville also struggled with mightily last year, what would you say in that factor of how he'll be able to transfer to the next level in both of those areas?
I think, number one, in terms of stopping the run, because I think, I know last year there was a resurgence of the run game with Saquon, and we had it here in Detroit as well. But that's going to be a part of the equation that you're going to have to do to be good at the NFL. It doesn't matter what. You've got to be good up front, offensively and defensively. You've got to be able to either run the ball, stop the run, and then as soon as that happens, because he does a great job of shedding blocks and being able to make the play at the point of attack. He's not a guy that you're going to have to worry about, well, he makes the play 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, because that's how he will shed the block. He can shed it at the point of attack and make a play at the line of scrimmage. But then to have the same guy in there, you don't have to sub somebody out for third down. You don't have to have a third down specialist. You don't have to move Trayvon Walker down and bring somebody else in at edge. He's a guy that can do it all. He's a 4-down guy, even against, a goal line and short yardage. He's a guy that you want in there because he's great at stopping the run. But to have that transition of run to pass and be able to flip that one, because he's a very smart player. He spent and I've sat with him in meetings. He is a very smart football player, a tremendous football IQ. So to have that and be able to recognize motions, formations, personnel groups, he'll be ahead of the game mentally, even just by stepping on the field.
John Jansen is our guest, talking Michigan prospects, most notably, of course, Mason Graham, projected to go in the top 10, first round, we'll call it. Maybe even top 5 to your Jacksonville Jaguars in this April's NFL draft. John, let's pivot to a couple other prospects. Personally, I don't believe that Kenneth Grant will be there at 36 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. One name, though, that a couple of our listeners have texted in, and they certainly want your insight about. You can tell us a little bit more about Grant, too, but the name Josiah Stewart, who could be there in the third round, which the Jaguars own 2 picks in this year's third round. Tell us a little bit more about those guys as well.
Well, if Kenneth Grant is there at 36, I'm going to be mad because the Lions didn't take him at 28. I don't think he even makes it to 28, and because he's got a high. Now, there's a floor to Kenneth because he's not as polished as Mason Graham. There's more that he needs to work on. Pad level is one of those things that he needs to be more consistent on. I mentioned the football IQ of Mason Graham. Kenneth Grant was a huge beneficiary of that. He needs to be there with some vets. So, if he's available at 36 and you put him with some of those vets up front, I think that would bode well for his development. But the ceiling for him is, oh my goodness, it's sky high. Jim Harbaugh, when he was here, said he's God's gift to football. And when you are able to run running backs down, which he did against Penn State a couple of years ago, 20 yards downfield, at that size, it's absolutely ridiculous. If he can harness everything, he's going to be a dominant defensive tackle as well. And to have 2 guys that are, top 5 defensive tackles and possibly taken in, the first round of the draft, it shows you what Michigan had last year up front. And then for Josiah Stewart, I think whoever drafts Josiah Stewart, if they get him in the third round or if he slips to the fourth, which I don't see it happening, it's going to be a great value for anybody that drafts him. He has always had, just like you asked about Mason Graham, the stigma of being too small. When he was at Coastal Carolina and transferred to Michigan, well, can he hold up against Big Ten offensive linemen? Turn on the Rose Bowl and watch what he did against Alabama's big offensive line, especially on fourth down when it mattered most. He stuffed that offensive line, sent Michigan to the national championship game. He's answered all those questions, but they're still going to be there, right? Because he is undersized for your typical edge guy. Now, I don't think he comes in, and he's not going to be a 3 or 4 down guy. He'll start off as a pass rush specialist. And what I like about him is his initial step off the ball, this year he did a tremendous job of developing his hands. In the NFL, especially being an offensive tackle, I'm concerned about guys that do a good job of trying to swat my hands, or if I get their hands down, can they replace them quickly? He really worked on that this year and did a nice job. His speed to power is there. It's the move off the move. That's the next step for him, because he's got a couple of really nice inside moves, and he'll set offensive linemen up. But it's a progression. And I think if you're able to get him in the third round, I think it's great value and an absolute steal.
John, who's better, Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren?
Oh, that's not even a fair question to ask.
Wait, did Penn State and Michigan play this year? I think they did.
No, they didn't.
Okay, all right.
No,
so we didn't get the show.
No, we didn't. And Penn State, because they're relatively new to the Big Ten and they have no rivalries, they don't have any protected games like a Michigan and Ohio State. And I'm not going to get off on a tangent about Penn State, but Tyler Warren this year was one of maybe the best tight end in the country. And I say that because Colston Loveland was injured for part of the year and didn't play in the USC game. Didn't play, obviously, in the bowl game, had to have surgery postseason. And the other thing is Colston Loveland didn't have a quarterback to throw him the ball. Colston Loveland would have rewritten the record books here in Ann Arbor had he been able to play with even a good quarterback. And so his catch radius is unmatched in this draft. He does a nice job of being able to identify defenses and coverages and being able to find those little nooks and crannies that all the best tight ends, they seem to find a way to always be open. That's what Colston Loveland can do. And I think, again, you talk about the knowledge of the game, and it's something that's hammered here at Michigan. Colston Loveland understands that. Where I think Tyler Warren has an edge is in the run game. He's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. Colston, over the course of the last couple of years, have talked to him about pad level and being able to play with that tackle and get some of those double teams, set the edge. And he's been better at that. But if you're looking for a pass catcher, I don't think there's anybody as good as Colston Loveland in this draft.
John, one final one before you let you go. This is a little bit more of a zoomed out question, and you being an offensive tackle, because a lot of the conversation around these offensive tackles this year with both Will Campbell and with Kelvin Banks, more the higher tackles projected, were that they maybe need to slide in. And this is a lot of factors between their size, their height, their arm length, things like that. When you are evaluating these tackles and you're kind of looking at what they may project into the NFL, what are your biggest signs personally of where they may play if they do need to slide in and be a guard?
Well, I think they're always going to start out at tackle. If you draft an offensive lineman in the first round, especially a guy like a Will Campbell, you want to see if he can make that transition from the college game to the NFL game. And I know everybody talks about his short arms, but again, turn the film on. And I think his arm length actually measured the same as Penei Sewell. And I would argue that Penei Sewell is maybe the best offensive tackle in the NFL. So it's a matter of being able to make that transition in terms of pass set, speed, to be able to set an anchor when somebody goes from speed to power, and, being able to read the defenses. So they're always going to start those guys off at tackle. And if they prove that they can't, then they may move them to the other side to see if they can handle it better from a different stance, from a different side. Then they'll bump them in where, they'll have sideboards and not have to worry about that lateral movement. But I think all of these guys, they'll spend at least a few years at tackle. They're good enough. They're quick enough. But it's just a matter of how do they make that transition from the college game where you may be facing an NFL-style rusher every other week. And I know in the SEC and the Big Ten, maybe a little bit more often, but obviously in the NFL, they're all really damn good. And you've got to find a way to create a book, study these defenders so that you have an advantage when you get there on Sundays.
Hi, John. Real quick, just one more. I promise. We're going to get you out of here. This is amazing. And don't worry, folks, if you missed any of this amazing interview with John Jansen up in Michigan, talking Michigan Wolverines prospects, we will have it available on the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel. We've gotten a couple submissions on our YouTube chat line. Will Johnson, why is he falling? Why is there speculation? Especially because, as you've noted about several prospects, turn on the tape, even if, yes, there's not a lot of tape from 2024 because of the injury.
Well, I mean, when you turn the tape on and you see the pick sixes, you see his ability to read quarterbacks, read offenses, understand. He's as good as you're going to find. The problem is availability. And I think that's one of the best traits that any athlete can have, especially at the pro level. When you're talking about the money they're throwing around right now, you've got to be available. Can he withstand 17 games and then a playoff stretch? How often will you be missing Will Johnson? And those are the questions. That's why he's dropping. He didn't perform at the Combine. He didn't perform at Michigan's Pro Day. I know he's got a private workout scheduled here in the coming days. It's really going to be important for him to show that, one, he's healthy, and then it's really going to come down to interviews. And his agent, and being able to prove, this was a legitimate injury. I was out. It wasn't a hangnail. It wasn't just a sore joint. It was a legitimate injury. And if they're able to prove that to NFL teams, I think he'll be a guy that can go anywhere 11 to 20. And I know before the season started in the first couple of games, probably a top 5 guy, but there are major concerns with how durable he will be.